The red and blue lights in my rearview mirror shouldn't have made my hands shake, but they did. Not from fear, from frustration. The dashboard clock read 11:47 p.m., and I was less than 2 miles from home after a 16-hour surveillance operation. My badge sat heavy in my jacket pocket as I eased my unmarked Tahoe onto the shoulder of Route 22. "Keep your hands where I can see them." The voice cracked through my partially lowered window before the officer even reached my door. Young, maybe. Mid-20s, with that fresh-from-academy swagger that hadn't been tempered by experience yet. His hand rested on his holster. "My hands are on the steering wheel, officer," I said, keeping my voice level. 23 years with the Bureau had taught me that the first rule of any encounter was to de-escalate, even when every instinct screamed otherwise. License and registration. "Now, I'm going to reach for my wallet in my back pocket." I narrated each movement, a habit drilled into me since Quantico. "Registration is in the glove compartment. Did I tell you to move?" His flashlight beam hit my face like a slap. "What are you doing out here this late?" The question hung between us, loaded with implications I'd heard too many times before. A black man in a nice vehicle, in this neighborhood, at this hour. The old song with the same tired lyrics. "I'm heading home from work." I handed him my documents. Slowly, deliberately, that he snatched them without looking at me, his flashlight dancing between my federal ID and my face. I watched his expression shift, confusion, then skepticism, then something harder. "FBI, huh?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "That's a new one. You know impersonating a federal agent is a felony, right?" "Officer." I glanced at his nameplate. "Morrison. That's my authentic federal identification. If you'd like." "To verify, step out of the vehicle." The words hit me like cold water. In all my years, through countless operations and undercover assignments, I'd never felt as vulnerable as I did in that moment. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but because I knew how these stories sometimes ended. "Officer Morrison, I'm special. Agent Marcus Webb with the FBI's Organized Crime Division. My badge number is—" I said, "Get out of the car." His hand moved to his weapon. Now, 6 hours earlier, I'd been sitting in that same Tahoe, watching a warehouse on the south side of the city. My partner, Rodriguez, munched on his third bag of chips while I nursed lukewarm coffee and tried to ignore the cramp in my lower back. "You see that?" Rodriguez pointed to a sedan pulling up to the loading dock. "That's our boy Chen's lieutenant. Third time this week." I adjusted the camera mounted on our dashboard, zooming in on the license plate. "Got it. That makes 6 confirmed associates documented at this location. We'd been building this case for 8 months, a multi-state trafficking ring that moved everything from weapons to synthetic opioids." Chen was careful, paranoid even, but everyone makes mistakes eventually. Tonight felt different, though. There was more activity than usual, more vehicles coming and going. "You think they're moving the shipment tonight?" Rodriguez asked. "Maybe. Or maybe they made us." I'd learned to trust my gut over the years, and right now it was telling me something was off. That's when my phone buzzed. Assistant Director Coleman's name lit up the screen. "Webb, we need you back at the field office." "Now." "Sir, we're in the middle of— the surveillance team can handle it. We've got a situation with the Chin case. Possible leak. I need you here. In 20 minutes. A leak. In law enforcement, few words carried more weight or danger. It meant someone on the inside was feeding information to the very people we were trying to stop. It meant months of work could be compromised. It meant agents' lives could be at risk. Rodriguez took over the surveillance position as I started the engine. "Be careful out there, Marcus. If there really is a leak, I know." I pulled away from our concealed position, my mind already racing through possibilities. Who had access to our intelligence? Who knew about tonight's operation? The field office was in chaos when I arrived. Agents huddled in groups, voices low and tense. Coleman pulled me into his office immediately. "We intercepted communications an hour ago," he said without preamble. "Chin knows about the surveillance. He knows about you specifically, Marcus. Your name, your vehicle, your usual routes." My blood ran cold. "How?" "We're still trying to figure that out. But until we do, I'm pulling you off the case. Take a few days, vary your routines. We'll assign a security detail if you want one." I declined the detail. After 2 decades in the Bureau, I'd faced death threats before. Part of the job. But, as Coleman's words echoed in my head during the drive home, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was different. More personal somehow. I'm not going to ask again. Officer Morrison's voice cut through my memories. Exit the vehicle with your hands visible. I unbuckled my seatbelt slowly, noting how his stance had shifted to what we called a ready position. Weight forward. Gun hand free. My training kicked in, analyzing angles, distances, potential outcomes. None of them good if this escalated further. I'm complying, Officer Morrison, I said, opening my door. I'm going to step out slowly. My hands will remain visible at all times. The cold November air hit me as I stood, my hands raised to shoulder height. Morrison had backed up, creating distance, textbook traffic stop positioning, except for the fact that his hand hadn't left his weapon. Turn around. Hands on the vehicle. I complied, spreading my fingers against the cold metal of the Tahoe's roof. This was the moment I prepared my teenage son for. The conversation every black parent has but hopes their child never needs. Comply. Survive. Sort out the rest later, but I wasn't a teenager. I was a federal agent with commendations from 2 presidents. And Officer Morrison was about to make the biggest mistake of his career. You carrying any weapons? His hands patted down my sides, rougher than necessary. Yes. Service weapon in. A shoulder holster, left side. I have a concealed carry permit in my wallet. I felt him tense, his breathing quickening. The weapon came out of my holster, and I heard it hit the ground behind us. Then my backup piece from my ankle. Then the tactical knife from my belt. Federal agent, my ass, he muttered. What kind of FBI agent carries this much hardware? The kind who's been working organized crime for over 2 decades, I said evenly. Officer Morrison, if you'll just contact, shut up. He grabbed my wrists, and I heard the distinctive click of handcuffs. You're under arrest for impersonating a federal officer, and that's when another set of headlights washed over us. A second patrol car, pulling up behind Morrison's unit. Finally, I thought, someone with more experience who might actually listen. But when I heard the door open and footsteps approaching, Morrison's grip on my arms tightened. What V we got here, Morrison? The new voice was older, gravelly. Sarge, caught this one speeding. Claims he's FBI, but I think we might have something bigger here. He's armed to the teeth. I turned my head slightly, catching a glimpse of the sergeant, a thick-set man with captain's bars, not sergeant stripes. And something in his eyes when he looked at me. Recognition, but not the good kind. Well, the captain said slowly. Agent Webb, what a surprise to find you out here. Tonight. My blood turned to ice. He knew my name. And the way he said it, with that slight smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. This wasn't a random traffic stop. This was exactly what Coleman had warned me about. The leak. Captain Raymond Hutchins. I'd seen his photo in our intelligence files just 6 hours ago, tagged as a person of interest in Chen's network. Suspected of providing protection for drug shipments moving through his precinct. And now here he was, standing on a dark stretch of Route 22, with me in handcuffs. Captain, Morrison straightened up, confusion evident in his voice. You know this guy? Oh, we're well acquainted, Hutchins said, moving closer. His breath reeked of cigarettes and something else. Whiskey, maybe. Agent Webb here has been very busy lately. Haven't you, Marcus? I kept my expression neutral, even as my mind raced. My phone was in the car, recording everything. Standard protocol I'd activated the moment I saw the lights. But would it be enough? Captain Hutchins, I said calmly. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Officer Morrison was doing his job. Hutchins cut me off. Pulling over a suspicious vehicle. Armed suspect. Fake federal credentials. This is good police work, officer. Morrison shifted uncomfortably. Sir, his ID looks pretty authentic. Lots of fake IDs look authentic these days. Hutchins picked up my service weapon from the ground, examining it. Glock 19, standard FBI issue. You can buy these anywhere. Same with the badge. I watched him handle my weapon, noting how comfortable he seemed with it. How his fingers stayed clear of the trigger. Professional, calculated. This wasn't some hot-headed corrupt cop. This was worse. This was someone who knew exactly what he was doing. Run the badge number, I said. Call it in. The FBI field office is 20 minutes away. At midnight. Hutchins laughed. Nobody's answering phones. At this hour. Guess you'll have to wait until morning to sort this out. From a holding cell. That's when I noticed Morrison had gone quiet. His flashlight beam wavered between Hutchins and me, and I could see the wheels turning in his head. Something wasn't adding up for him either. "Captain," Morrison ventured, "shouldn't we at least verify? Are you questioning my judgment, officer?" Hutchins's voice dropped to a dangerous register. "No, sir. It's just, protocol says, I'll tell you what protocol says." Hutchins moved closer to Morrison, using his bulk to intimidate. "Protocol says we arrest suspicious individuals. Protocol says we protect our community from criminals pretending to be cops. Isn't that right?" I could see Morrison struggling, caught between his training and his superior's orders. In that moment, I felt an unexpected sympathy for him. He was just a kid trying to do his job, now trapped in something much bigger than a traffic stop. "Officer Morrison," I said quietly, "what made you pull me over?" He glanced at Hutchins before answering. You were speeding. Doing 47 in a 35. Was I? I kept my voice conversational. "Did you clock me on radar?" Morrison's silence was answer enough. "Interesting. Because I had my cruise control set to exactly 35. It's a habit of mine. 23 years of careful driving. Never had a moving violation. You can check." "Shut your mouth," Hutchins snapped. "Morrison, get him in the car. We're taking him." In. But Morrison didn't move. "Captain, I didn't actually clock him speeding. You called it in, said to watch for a black Tahoe, suspected DUI." The words hung in the air like an accusation. Hutchins's face darkened. "That's right. And here we have a black Tahoe with an armed, suspicious individual. Good enough for me. It's not good enough for a judge," I said. "Or for internal affairs. Or for the FBI agents who are, right now, wondering why I haven't checked in." That was a lie. Nobody expected me until morning. But Hutchins didn't know that. "You're bluffing," he said, but I caught the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "Am I? You know who I am, Captain. You know what I've been working on. Did you really think you could make a federal agent disappear without consequences?" Morrison took a step back. "Make him disappear? Captain, what's he talking about?" "Nothing. He's trying to confuse you, Morrison. Criminals say all kinds of things when they're cornered." I played my next card carefully. "Tell me, Morrison, when did Captain Hutchins call in that DUI suspicion? Before or after you started your shift?" Morrison's hand moved unconsciously to his radio. It was right before I saw you. Maybe 5 minutes. Convenient timing. Almost like someone knew exactly where I'd be. Exactly when I'd be driving home from the field office. That's enough." Hutchins reached for his cuffs. "Morrison, you're relieved. I'll handle this arrest personally." "Captain, I don't think that's right. You don't think. You follow orders. Now get back to your patrol." But Morrison stood his ground. Young, inexperienced, but not stupid. And definitely not corrupt. "Sir, with all due respect, I initiated this stop. I should see it through." I watched Hutchins's mask slip for just a moment, pure rage flashing across his features before he forced it back under control. "Fine," he said through gritted teeth. "Then arrest him. Now." Morrison looked at me, really looked at me for the first time. A middle-aged black man in a suit, cuffed but calm, speaking with the kind of measured authority that comes from years of law enforcement experience. Then he looked at Hutchins, red-faced, agitated, pushing too hard for an arrest on charges that were already falling apart. "I'm going to verify his credentials first," Morrison said quietly. "Officer Morrison, it's protocol, Captain." Morrison pulled out his phone. "I'm calling dispatch to run the badge number." What happened next occurred in slow motion. Hutchins lunged for Morrison's phone. Morrison, surprised, stumbled backward. And in that moment of chaos, I made my move. 23 years of field training kicked in. Even cuffed, I could move. I dropped my shoulder and drove it into Hutchins's midsection, sending him sprawling onto the asphalt. My service weapon skittered across the ground. "Morrison," I shouted. "Call for backup. Officer needs assistance." To his credit, Morrison reacted instantly, his radio crackling to life. "This is Unit 23. I need immediate backup on Route 22 mile. Marker 41. Code 3. Repeat, Code 3. Hutchins scrambled for the weapon, but I got my foot on it first, kicking it toward Morrison. The young officer scooped it up, and suddenly the entire dynamic shifted. "Don't move, Captain," Morrison commanded, his voice steady now. Training taking over. Hutchins rose slowly, his face a mask of fury. "You just ended your career, Morrison. You know that." "Maybe," Morrison said. but at least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror. The next 10 minutes felt like hours. Sirens in the distance, growing louder. Hutchins standing there, calculating his options. Morrison keeping. Both of us covered, smart enough not to trust either of us completely. When the backup units arrived, it was chaos. 3 patrol cars, then 2 more. Then, finally, the black SUVs I'd been hoping for. My colleague Rodriguez stepped out of the lead vehicle, his FBI windbreaker visible in the swirling lights. "Marcus, you good?" "Better now," I said as Morrison finally uncuffed me. Captain Hutchins here was just explaining how he knew exactly where to find me tonight. Hutchins's face had gone pale. The arrival of actual FBI agents had shattered whatever plan he'd concocted. "I want a lawyer," he said. "You'll get one," Rodriguez replied. "After we book you for attempted kidnapping of a federal agent, conspiracy, and about a dozen other charges. Oh, and Captain, that warehouse you've been protecting? We raided it an hour ago. Chin's already in custody. He's talking. Guess whose name keeps coming up?" I watched them lead Hutchins away, his career and freedom, evaporating in the flashing lights. But I found myself more interested in Morrison, who stood apart from the chaos, looking lost. "Hell of a thing, your first year on the job," I said, walking over to him. "I'm sorry, Agent Webb. You should have done exactly what you did," I interrupted. "You assessed the situation and made the right call when it mattered. That takes courage." He managed a weak smile. "Think I'll still have a job tomorrow, after stopping a corrupt captain from kidnapping a federal agent." I pulled out my card. "You'll probably get a commendation. But if things get complicated, you call me. The Bureau's always looking for officers with integrity." As I drove home an hour later, in my own vehicle this time, with Rodriguez following. As a precaution, I thought about the strange turns life takes. How a routine traffic stop had exposed a conspiracy we'd been hunting for months. How a young officer's conscience had made all the difference. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. Assistant Director Coleman. "Marcus, I heard what happened. You okay?" "Fine, sir. Turns out you were right about that leak. Hutchins is already trying to make a deal. Offering up names, dates, everything. This is big, Marcus. Bigger than just Chun." I sat in my driveway, exhaustion finally hitting me. "What about Morrison? The young officer? The one who stood up to his captain? Don't worry about him. I've already made some calls. Kid's going to be just fine. Might even fast-track him for detective." After we hung up, I sat in the darkness for a moment longer. In 23 years with the Bureau, I'd learned that justice came in many forms. Sometimes it was a lengthy investigation ending in convictions. Sometimes it was a corrupt captain in handcuffs. And sometimes it was a young officer choosing his integrity over his career, standing in the flashing lights of a police stop, doing the right thing when it mattered most. I gathered my weapons from the passenger seat. Morrison had returned them all, meticulously logged, and headed inside. Tomorrow would bring paperwork, depositions, and the long process of dismantling Hutchins's network. But tonight, I was just grateful to be home.